Imagine standing in a room full of people where everyone is talking, laughing, and connecting. You want to approach someone, but hesitation creeps in. What if they don't respond? What if you're ignored? Now imagine this. There are 4 simple words that can dissolve that fear, open any door, and make people gravitate toward you. Just 4 words, and they can change the way you connect forever. Too often in life, we step into conversations with one question quietly echoing in our minds: what do I get out of this? It may not always be obvious, but it's there. We walk into a meeting thinking about how we can impress. We approach a stranger worrying if they will accept us. We even talk to loved ones while half distracted by what we need in return. This way of seeing the world creates tension, because the energy behind it is self-centered. People can sense it. They may not be able to explain why, but something inside tells them this person is not here for me, they're here for themselves. And when that thought arises, connection is lost before it even begins. Now imagine a different way. Imagine entering a conversation and, instead of asking, "What do I get?" you silently ask, "What can I give?" The shift is small, but it changes everything. Because when you focus on giving rather than taking, the pressure melts away. There's no need to prove yourself, no need to perform, no need to chase approval. Instead, you step into a role that people instantly feel safe with. You become someone who listens, who sees, who values. And isn't that what we all crave? To be seen, to be valued. Think of the last time someone truly gave you their full attention. Not half listening while scrolling through a phone. Not nodding politely while waiting for their turn to speak. But really, truly listening. Do you remember how that felt? It was almost magnetic, wasn't it? You felt lighter. You felt respected. And maybe for a brief moment, you felt like you mattered more than the noise of the world around you. That is the effect of shifting focus outward. And the beautiful thing is, it doesn't require extraordinary talent or charisma. It requires humility. It requires the willingness to set aside the question of what can I get, and replace it with how can I serve. You see, most people carry invisible weight on their shoulders. Doubts, insecurities, worries about the future, regrets from the past. They walk through life hoping that, just for a moment, someone will notice them. Someone will ask the right question, offer the right words, or simply care enough to listen. When you step into that space with the mindset of giving, you become the person. You become the one who lifts the invisible weight, even if only for a short time. And that is why people are drawn to you. Not because of what you own, not because of how impressive your stories are, but because in your presence, they feel lighter. They feel important. They feel alive. Now here is the irony: when you stop chasing attraction, you create it. When you stop asking, how can this person make me feel better about myself? And instead wonder, how can I make them feel better about themselves? You flip the dynamic. And suddenly, people want to be near you. Why? Because you're no longer taking energy, you're giving it. And giving energy is irresistible. It doesn't drain people, it fuels them. It doesn't compete, it uplifts. And human beings are naturally pulled toward what uplifts them. But let's be clear, this shift isn't about pretending. It isn't about using kindness as a mask to get what you want. If the intention is still rooted in self-gain, people will feel it. They always do. Authenticity cannot be faked. So the practice here is to genuinely cultivate that mindset of giving. To train yourself before speaking, before entering a room, before approaching someone, to pause and ask, how can I bring value to this moment? How can I leave this person feeling better than before they met me? That simple question becomes a compass. It directs your words, your body language, your presence. And when you live from that compass, trust begins to form. Consider how rare this is in our world today. Most conversations are transactional. Most interactions are performances. Everyone is busy trying to look good, to be clever, to stand out. But very few are willing to simply be present for another human being. Very few are willing to take a step back and listen without judgment, without agenda. This rarity is why the shift is so powerful, because it makes you unforgettable. When people feel that you truly care, they don't just remember you for that moment. They carry that memory with them. They want to see you again, to speak with you again, to be in your presence again. And here is the beautiful paradox: the more you focus on giving, the more you actually receive. Not because you demanded it, not because you chased it, but because people naturally want to return the energy you gave. They want to support you, help you, lift you in the same way you lifted them. But by then, it no longer matters, because you weren't focused on receiving in the first place. You were focused on giving, And that is the essence of true connection. So remember, this attraction doesn't come from trying to be interesting. It comes from being interested. It doesn't come from talking more. It comes from listening deeply. It doesn't come from standing out. It comes from making others feel they stand out. And when you shift the focus from yourself to others, you'll find that the very thing you were looking for, the respect, the attention, the connection, arrives effortlessly. Not because you chased it, but because you created the space for it to come to you. Every human being carries within them a silent desire, though few speak about it openly. That desire is the need to be acknowledged. You can see it in the way a child looks up, waiting for approval after showing a drawing. You can feel it in the way a colleague pauses, hoping their effort is noticed. You can hear it in the way someone lingers on a story, longing for you to simply say, "I understand." This need is so deeply woven into our existence that we often underestimate its power. Yet, it is one of the strongest forces that bind us together as human beings. Think about this: we live in a world more connected than ever before. Messages travel instantly, voices are broadcast across oceans, and faces appear on glowing screens within seconds. And yet so many feel unseen, surrounded by noise but starved of true recognition. That is why when you look at someone, truly look at them, when you let your eyes, your attention, your presence say, "I see you," you give them something priceless. These 4 words, when spoken with sincerity, go straight to that unspoken need. They are not complicated, they are not rehearsed, but they strike the very center of the human heart. It's worth remembering that acknowledgement is not the same as agreement. You don't have to share the same opinion, you don't have to mirror someone's perspective, and you don't have to solve their problems. What people hunger for is not correction, it is recognition. To feel that their voice reached another ear, that their thoughts matter enough to occupy someone else's mind for a moment. This is why people are drawn to those who know how to acknowledge. Because in that acknowledgement, they feel human again, they feel whole again. Let me share a simple truth: people rarely remember the exact words you say, but they always remember how you made them feel. If you leave someone feeling dismissed, they will carry that sting long after the conversation ends. But if you leave them feeling valued, they will carry that warmth even longer. When you use acknowledgement as your way of connecting, you are planting seeds in people's hearts. Seeds that may grow into trust, into loyalty, into friendship, into love. And what could be more attractive than someone who consistently makes others feel valued? Now think about the people in your life who left the greatest impression on you. Perhaps a teacher, a mentor, a friend, a stranger who showed unexpected kindness. Chances are, what made them unforgettable wasn't that they had the loudest voice or the most dazzling personality. It was that, in their presence, you felt significant. You felt like you mattered. That is the power of acknowledgement. It transforms ordinary interactions into extraordinary ones. But here lies the challenge: acknowledgement requires presence. It demands that you set aside distraction, that you step out of your own mind and into theirs. Too often, we listen only to reply, not to understand. We hear words, but we don't absorb them. We nod mechanically while thinking of the next thing we want to say. And people notice. They may smile politely, but deep inside they sense the absence of real attention. That is why acknowledgement feels so rare, because presence is rare. And precisely because it is rare, when you offer it, it shines. Acknowledgement is not about grand gestures. It can be as simple as remembering someone's name, repeating back their words to show you truly heard, or asking a question that goes one layer deeper than the surface. These small acts tell a person, you are not invisible. And those who practice this consistently discover something remarkable. People begin to gravitate toward them naturally, because we are all searching for safe spaces, places where we feel accepted, people who remind us of our worth. Attraction, in its purest form, is not about impressing, it's about connecting. It's about offering the one thing every soul is quietly yearning for: acknowledgement. And when you master this, you stop chasing people. Instead, they start seeking you. They start returning to your presence. Not because you dazzled them with charm, but because with you, they feel human in the truest sense of the word. And here's something even deeper: when you practice acknowledgement outwardly, you begin to feel its effect inwardly. As you give recognition to others, you start softening the voice of judgment within yourself. You start treating your own thoughts, your own emotions, with that same sense of value. You realize that acknowledgement is not only a gift you give to the world, but also a gift you give to yourself. Because when you acknowledge others, You remind yourself that you too are part of this vast human story and that your voice matters just as much. So let me leave you with this: never underestimate the hunger people carry to be seen, to be heard, to be valued. The world does not lack information, it lacks acknowledgement. The world does not lack words, it lacks presence. And the ones who can give that presence, the ones who can speak those 4 simple words with sincerity, will always be remembered, respected, and loved. When we meet new people, or even interact with those we already know, there is often an invisible wall that separates us. Sometimes it's the wall of fear, fear of being judged, fear of being rejected, fear of saying the wrong thing. Sometimes it's the wall of indifference, where 2 people stand close in distance but remain far apart in connection. And other times, it's simply the wall of habit, going through the motions of polite conversation without ever truly opening up. These walls exist everywhere, and most people never stop to question them. They accept the distance, they accept the awkwardness, they accept that connection is something rare and reserved for a few lucky moments. But that is not the truth. These walls are not permanent structures. They are fragile, waiting to be dissolved, and all it takes is the right approach. The right words, spoken from the right place, have the power to cut through these barriers instantly. And this is where those 4 simple words come into play. When you speak them sincerely, without pretense, you send a message that goes far deeper than just sound. You are telling the other person, I care enough to reach across this wall. And in most cases, they respond by lowering their own defenses, by letting you in. Think of how many moments in life have been lost because no one was willing to take the first step. How many friendships never began, how many opportunities slipped away, how many connections faded into silence, simply because the wall was never broken. People wait and wait for the other person to make a move, to show interest, to offer acknowledgement. But what if you stop waiting? What if you are the one who chooses to bridge that distance first? The one who refuses to let fear dictate the outcome? When you do, you become the catalyst for connection. You create what others are longing for but too hesitant to initiate. I remember observing how a simple smile, followed by genuine words of interest, can transform an entire atmosphere. A room that once felt tense suddenly becomes warm. A conversation that seemed difficult suddenly feels effortless. And the person who just moments ago seemed distant now leans in closer, as if the wall between you had never existed. That is the invisible power you hold, not to control others, not to manipulate, but to unlock the natural desire within them to connect. The truth is, people are not as guarded as they appear. Most of them are simply waiting for permission to drop the mask. They wear a face of confidence, of indifference, of busyness, but deep inside they are hoping for someone to reach through and touch the real them. These 4 words act as that permission. They open the door, they invite honesty, they say without saying, you are safe here, you can be yourself. And once that safety is felt, the wall crumbles on its own. You see, human beings are wired for connection. From the very beginning of life, we are drawn to those who make us feel secure. That does not change as we grow older. It only becomes buried under layers of fear, pride, and doubt. But when you practice dissolving walls, when you approach people with sincerity and openness, you awaken that original instinct in them. They remember, even if unconsciously, what it feels like to connect without fear, and that memory pulls them toward you, often before they even realize it. But here's what makes this practice even more powerful. It doesn't just transform the other person, it transforms you. Each time you choose to break a wall instead of building one, you grow stronger. Each time you step past hesitation, you weaken the grip of fear in your own life. You begin to see that rejection is not the end, indifference is not personal, and awkwardness is only temporary. What lasts is the courage you cultivated, the connection you sparked, the trust you earned. That courage builds on itself, until one day you realize that walls no longer intimidate you. They inspire you, because you know you hold the words that can break them. And perhaps the most remarkable part of all this is how universal it is. These walls are not cultural, they are not limited to one type of person, one language, or one background. Everywhere you go, people carry them. And everywhere you go, you can dissolve them. Whether in a marketplace, an office, a gathering of strangers, or even in your own family, the effect is the same. The walls are there, and you have the choice. Do you leave them standing, or do you take the step to bring them down? When you decide to take that step, something shifts in your presence. People begin to sense that being around you feels easier, lighter, freer. They cannot always explain it, but they know it. And once they feel it, they don't forget it. They remember the person who made connections simple again, the person who didn't hide behind walls, the person who allowed them to drop their own guard without fear. So never underestimate what can happen when you choose to break the walls that others accept as permanent. What seems small in the moment can ripple outward into something life-changing. A single conversation can spark a friendship. A single gesture can inspire trust. A single act of openness can create opportunities you never imagined. And it all begins with you deciding not to accept the wall, but to step through it with presence, with care, with 4 simple words that unlock the human heart. It is easy to believe that attraction is created in a single moment, that one phrase, one gesture, one spark of energy is all it takes to win someone over. And yes, a moment can open the door, but what keeps that door from closing is not a single act, it is consistency. Anyone can show kindness once, anyone can express interest once, anyone can say something sincere once, but people are not drawn to fleeting moments, they are drawn to steady patterns. It is consistency that builds trust, and trust is the deepest form of attraction. Think about it. How many times have you been impressed by someone at first, only to later feel disappointed because their words didn't match their actions? The warmth they showed at the beginning slowly faded. The interest they expressed was temporary. The effort they gave was conditional. That inconsistency leaves a shadow, and it breaks the very foundation of connection. It's not the grand gestures that matter most. It's the repeated ones, the small ones, the ones that say without speaking, "You can count on me to be the same person today, tomorrow and the day after." People are not searching for perfection, they are searching for reliability. They want to know that if you say you care, you will care not just today, but also when it's inconvenient. If you listen once, you will listen again, not only when it benefits you. If you show kindness once, you will not abandon it when the situation changes. This kind of consistency builds a sense of safety, and safety is magnetic. Because when people feel safe with you, they don't have to wear a mask. They don't have to measure their words or guard their heart. They can simply be themselves. And that is the highest gift you can offer another human being. Consistency does not mean being perfect or always saying the right thing. It means being steady in your intention. Even when you stumble, even when you make mistakes, people will forgive if they feel your sincerity is genuine and unbroken. What matters is not flawless execution, but honest repetition. Over time, your consistency becomes your character, and your character becomes your presence. And presence is what people are truly attracted to, not the surface of who you are, but the steady depth behind it. Now, ask yourself, why is consistency so rare? Because it requires discipline. It requires that we resist the temptation to act only when it suits us. It requires patience to keep showing up, even when there is no immediate reward. It requires humility to understand that building trust is not about what we gain, but about what we give repeatedly, without keeping score. This is why consistency is powerful, because it demonstrates something most people are not willing to commit to. It shows strength, it shows integrity, it shows authenticity, and when you practice it, people will notice. At first, they may not say anything, but they will feel it. They will sense that every time they interact with you, the energy is the same, steady, reliable, rooted. That steadiness makes you different in a world where so many change their tone depending on the situation, their words depending on who is listening, their actions depending on what they can gain. Consistency is rare, and what is rare always becomes valuable. Imagine being the kind of person that others know they can lean on, not because you promised loudly, but because you proved quietly, over and over, that you could be trusted. This is how loyalty is born. This is how relationships deepen. This is how admiration grows. Not through single fireworks that light up the sky for a moment, but through the steady glow of a flame that never goes out. And there is something else. When you practice consistency with others, you begin to cultivate it within yourself. You begin to show up not only for them, but also for your own goals, your own growth, your own dreams. Because consistency is not a habit reserved for relationships, it becomes a way of life. The discipline you use to keep your word to others becomes the same discipline that helps you keep your promises to yourself. And when you keep your promises to yourself, your confidence grows. That inner strength radiates outward, and people feel it before you even speak. So, understand this clearly: true attraction is not about intensity, it is about longevity. Anyone can shine for a moment, but can you continue shining when the initial excitement fades? Can you keep showing up when it becomes difficult? Can you keep your presence steady even when the world around you is chaotic? When you become unshakable. And people are drawn to what is unshakable. They are drawn to those who give them the gift of consistency, because in that gift they find trust. And trust, once built, becomes the foundation of every meaningful connection in life. So remember, consistency is the invisible thread that holds connection together. Without it, words lose weight, gestures lose meaning, and attraction fades. With it, even the smallest action becomes powerful, because it is repeated until it forms trust. And trust is not given lightly, but once it is given, it becomes unbreakable. When we speak about attraction, it's easy to think of it only in terms of how others see us, how others respond to us, how others are drawn into our presence. But the truth is, every interaction begins with the energy we carry within ourselves. If inside we are restless, insecure, doubtful, then no matter how carefully we choose our words, that inner state will always leak out. People may not be able to explain it, but they will feel it. On the other hand, when inside we are steady, when we are aligned with what we say, when we truly believe in the value we bring, that energy radiates without effort. Others sense it, they lean toward it, and they are drawn to it. This is why the practice of using these 4 words not only transforms your relationships with others, but also reshapes your relationship with yourself. Every time you say them with sincerity, you remind yourself that connection is not built on ego, but on humility. You remind yourself that you are capable of lifting others, that you have the power to make someone's day lighter simply by being present. And with every repetition, you begin to dissolve the fear of not being enough. Because if your focus is on giving, if your focus is on helping, then there is no room left for doubt. Doubt exists only when we stand in front of the mirror asking, am I good enough? Am I impressive enough? Will they like me? But when you shift the focus outward, when you practice giving consistently, the mirror no longer controls you. You stop obsessing over how you are perceived and begin to live in alignment with what you can offer. And something powerful happens when you do this repeatedly. You begin to attract the best version of yourself. You begin to notice the strength you didn't know you had, the patience that grows from listening, the confidence that rises from being dependable, the humility that blossoms from serving. What you thought you were offering to others turns out to be the very thing you needed for yourself. The practice becomes the mirror, showing you not who you fear you are, but who you are becoming. The world often tells us that attraction is about appearance, about style, about charm. And while those things may catch attention for a moment, they fade quickly if there is no substance behind them. But when your growth is inward, when you practice cultivating qualities like patience, generosity, and steadiness, you begin to glow with something that cannot be faked. That glow is felt in your presence, in your silence, in your smallest gestures. It is the kind of attraction that does not shout. It whispers. It does not demand, it invites. And because it is rooted in authenticity, it lasts. This is why transformation always begins within. You cannot expect to create deep connections if you yourself are disconnected from your own heart. You cannot expect to build trust if you do not trust yourself. You cannot expect to attract sincerity if you do not live sincerely. The more you align your inner world with the values you practice outwardly, the stronger your presence becomes. And when presence is strong, attraction follows naturally, like a flame pulling others out of the dark. Think for a moment about the people you admire most. Not because of what they own, not because of their achievements, but because of how they made you feel. Chances are, what drew you to them was not their words alone, but the alignment between who they were and how they lived. They carried themselves with a kind of quiet strength, a kind of authenticity that needed no decoration. That is what practicing these 4 words can give you. Not just stronger relationships, but also the chance to become that kind of person yourself, someone whose energy speaks before their mouth does, someone whose presence uplifts even before they act. And here is the beauty of it: as you continue to grow in this way, you discover that the line between attracting others and attracting yourself begins to blur. Because the more you live with integrity, the more at home you feel in your own skin. The more you practice humility, the more free you feel from the endless chase of validation. The more you learn to give, the more you realize you are already full. In that fullness, people sense stability. They sense peace. They sense a strength they want to be around. So, never underestimate the power of these 4 words. Not only to open hearts, but to open your own. They are not just a way of speaking, they are a way of living. They are a daily practice that brings you closer to others and closer to yourself. And when you live this practice long enough, you won't need to chase attraction anymore. You won't need to convince anyone of your worth, because who you are will speak louder than anything you could ever say.